If you walked with your friends here, shopped here, ate 7-layer cake here, prayed here, saw a matinee here, you are a part of Jewish history. If this was your Friday night, and your Saturday morning, if you walked these halls, had your first kiss here, or had a meeting here, you are a part of Jewish history. If you wore a bad suit and thanked your parents, bowled your first 200 game, took a bow, learned to swim, if you celebrated or mourned, if you made a stand or just stood here, you're a part of Jewish history. History is community, and for over 60 years, Jewish Historical Society of Michigan has kept our community's history alive. The highs and the lows, even today, keeping us connected, laughing, learning, engaging. You are a part of Jewish history, and we all want to continue to make history. Show your support for Jewish Historical Society of Michigan. We keep the past present, and you are our future.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting with Dr. Ora Pescovitz. And before I begin, I am Risha B, the president of the Jewish Historical Society of Michigan, and I'm honored to be able to spend some time with her. I've learned a little bit about her over the last few days, and I'm anxious to hear what Dr. Pescovitz has to say. You know, the series is about shattering the ceiling, and after reviewing her biography, she has done that many times over. She's a pediatric endocrinologist who's written a number of articles, 150 or so articles on many different subjects. She's also served on a number of boards. She was at the Indiana University, University of Michigan, and now she's at Oakland University as the president. That in and of itself is a ceiling to be shattered. Thank you again, Dr. Pescovitz, for being here with us this afternoon. And I think the best place to start is in the beginning. Tell us about your childhood and how being a rabbi's kid impacted your career and your life. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to college, medical school? And let us know a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you, Risha. I'm really thrilled to be here with the Jewish Historical Society of Michigan. I'm flattered and honored to be a part of this program, Shattering the Ceiling. I was born in Chicago. I was conceived in Denver. My parents had a very interesting history. My father is a rabbi, and he met my mother, who was a European. She grew up in Russia during World War II. Her family was from Lodz, Poland. And she spent the years of World War II in Siberia. Her father was killed by Stalin, and most of her family was killed in Auschwitz. After the war, she spent 2 years in displaced persons camps, and then she ended up on the very first boat that landed in Israel when it was declared a state. She was handed a gun and was the only woman in a battalion of 60 men and fought in the War of Independence in Israel. And after 6 years in Israel, she came to the United States to visit just 2 relatives who were survivors of concentration camps. And by chance, because she didn't have enough money, she ended up getting a job as a nurse, because she was a nurse, in the camp where my father was the director of the camp in Denver. And they fell in love, got married, and she stayed in the United States for the next 20 years. The only language they had in common was Hebrew. I was the first of their 4 children. And I grew up in a family with 3 younger brothers, and we all spoke Hebrew at home because that was the language my parents knew, and they wanted their children to be brought up speaking Hebrew. 3 of my brothers and I, 2 of my brothers and I are doctors, and one of them is a rabbi. And so we all came from a family that was very service-oriented, very focused on tikkun olam and making a difference in the world. So I can tell you a little bit more about, how I ended up in medical school, but that was the short version. My family moved to Washington when my dad got a job to be the executive director, the first founding director of the Religious Action Center in Washington. And then we moved to Israel in 1973 when my father became the founding director of the World Union for Progressive Judaism. That was 1973, just before the Yom Kippur War. I graduated high school a year early so that I could join my family there and not have to do my senior year in high school. And I went to Hebrew University for that year, knowing that I wanted to become a doctor. And eventually I went to medical school at Northwestern. Interestingly, I know that Kara Schuckman is on this call with us. And I went to a 6-year medical program with her father, Dr. Chuck Baumser, and we were in the same 6-year medical program there at Northwestern, a very accelerated program. And I met my husband there this first day of New Student Week. And I spent the next several years following my husband as a trailing spouse. 4 moves where I followed my husband basically around the country. First to Minneapolis, where we both did our residency programs, then to Washington, where we were in the National Institutes of Health, where we did our fellowship programs, then back to Minneapolis, and eventually to Indianapolis. During that time, we had 3 children in 3.5 years, and we both had very significant academic careers. He was a transplant surgeon, and I became a pediatric endocrinologist. And then I can tell you a little bit more about that, but I want to give you a chance to ask me some questions.
So as you just said, you just said a mouthful. In a short period of time, you became a physician. And somewhere I read that you started medical school very, very young, and it was a shortened program. So in a short period of time, you became a pediatric endocrinologist and did all of these things, plus 3 children,
right,
who if I read it correctly, they're all very, very successful in their careers right now. And, you know, as a working woman, a working mother myself, you know, juggling all of that is certainly a very, very challenging thing. And and also to have accomplished as much as you have is certainly commendable. Where, of all of the things that you achieved prior to coming to OU, what is it that's most, that you're most proud of?
Well, I've done a number of things during that time prior to coming to OU. So as I said, you know, one of the things that was part of my background is that I was at first a trailing spouse, because my husband and I both had very advanced academic careers. He worked as a transplant surgeon, and he was a scientist and a researcher, and so was I. And we were raising a young family at the same time. And during that time, I was also advancing academically. So during the 21 years that I was at Indiana University, I was, at first I was the director of pediatric endocrinology. Then I became the dean for research for the School of Medicine. Then I became the CEO of Riley Hospital for Children, which is the nation's 6th largest children's hospital. And then simultaneously, I also was the vice president for research for all 8 campuses of Indiana University. And I did all of those things prior to coming to the University of Michigan Health System, where I was the CEO of the University of Michigan Health System. So I was very proud of all of those contributions. They were very significant because they contributed a lot to the development of the life sciences initiatives in Indiana, which at the time were really fledgling. And today they have led to the creation of something that is called BioCrossroads in Indianapolis and in Indiana, which have really become a nidus for life sciences. And this is was at the beginning of the era of the sequencing of the Human Genome Project in the early 2000s. And so it was a very, very important time for how we understand genetics and genomics, which has actually played a very important role for how we think about even COVID today. And so it was a pivotal period in our understanding of science, technology transfer. So it was really quite important. And I feel privileged to have had the opportunity to have played a role in all of that.
A significant role,
Yeah.
and certainly impactful. This transition from physician academics to administration, and now at Oakland University, you really don't have that much to do with medicine, if I'm correct.
Well, yes and no. So I would, so let me just say that my first tour of duty in Michigan was when I spent a little over 5 years at the University of Michigan Health System, where I oversaw the medical school and the health system at the University of Michigan. I left there, I was there between 2009 and 2014. And while I was there, unfortunately, my husband was killed in a car accident. And I left and returned back to Indianapolis and took a job at Eli Lilly and Company in the pharmaceutical industry to be closer to my children and to try my hand in industry, which was a really terrific opportunity again. But when I came back to Michigan now as president of Oakland, although my current job is not directly in medicine, Oakland, it has a fantastic medical school, which is affiliated with Beaumont. And I would not have taken a job as president of a university if we did not also have a medical school. So I was asked to look at some presidencies that did not have medical schools. I would not have considered a university presidency that did not also include a really exciting medical school like Oakland's. So
Well, it was a wise choice on your part and a wise choice on their part to have you at Oakland University. You mentioned your children, so and your 6 grandchildren earlier today. That's probably one of the best roles that you have, is to be a grandmother. I know for me it is, but can you talk about your children and their what they're doing and where they live, and yeah, talk about your kids, please.
yeah, I have a lot of nachas from my my 3 children, my 3 in-law children, and my 6 grandchildren. So my oldest daughter, Aliza, and her husband, Ramsey, are both lawyers, and they live in Dallas, and they have 3 children, and they're between the ages of 3 and 6. So they're a very busy dual career family, and they're really wonderful. My son, Ari, is an architect, and his wife, Allison, is a surgeon, and they live in Brooklyn, and they have 2 children. And then my youngest daughter, Naomi, and her husband, Eric, live in Manhattan, and they just had my youngest grandchild, Max. And so I have 6 grandchildren and 6 wonderful children.
Hopefully you have time to get to LaGuardia Airport every once in a while and get down to Dallas, because
I just saw all 6 of them, and it was wonderful.
That's great. That's great. So COVID has probably been an important part of your job the last 18 months and how to deal with that. I'm an educator myself, and I'm just wondering how that magic word is going to change the lives of Oakland students, and how you're going to navigate through this in the near future.
Yeah, well, maybe I could take a moment and just talk a bit about how we have navigated it in this past year and a half, and then talk a bit about what we will be doing in the future. I'm very proud of Oakland's response in the last year and a half. And I will say that 2 things about me have perhaps differentiated our response to COVID in the past year and a half. They've informed how we've responded, and I think they will inform how we will respond in the future. And they're relevant to the Jewish Historical Society. One is, I would say, my being Jewish, and 2, my being a physician. And I'll just say, with respect to my being Jewish, we have a phrase in Hebrew, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze B'Zeh, which means all of Israel is responsible one for another. And that attitude that I have about how I feel about it means all of Israel, all Jews are responsible one for another. But I extrapolate from that and feel that we as people are all responsible for one another, not just for ourselves. And so that approach that I have has informed our decision-making about COVID, not just for ourselves. And so I'll speak about that. And also the fact that I'm a physician, I think has enabled us to have a very safe and effective plan as we went through the COVID year. So I was very attuned to this virus very early on. So as early as January of 2020, I was very concerned that we were going to have a global pandemic. well before it became apparent that that was the case. So our team at Oakland University started to prepare very early on. By March 11th, when Governor Whitmer called me and several of the other presidents to let us know that we were going to have to close the university and stop face-to-face instruction, we were fully prepared. We had a plan in place. We were just ready to push go on the plan and execute. And we had it ready to go. We were the first university to announce at that time that we were going to go hybrid, but it was very easy for us to do it because we had the plan in place. And over the course of a weekend, we went from being fully face-to-face to going fully online. We did that because we were ready. Then we were the first university in Michigan to announce that we were going to go hybrid. And we went hybrid over the course of the rest of most of this year. And then we were the second public university in the country to announce that we would have a mandate for our resident students to be vaccinated. And we were the second public university in the country to mandate that, and the first public university in Michigan to have any kind of vaccine mandate. I think all of those follow the principles that I'm talking about. We had a very low, not zero, but a very low rate of COVID infections among our students, faculty, and staff. And we've had a very, very positive response rate. Oakland is ranked the second safest university in the country by a magazine called College Magazine. And that was before this. And so there are many features about Oakland that I'm extremely proud of. But I think that this kind of a response, I think, demonstrates many principles that make us an exceptional university. There are many other things that I'm proud of, but specifically to your question and your point about COVID, I feel really very good about how we've responded to date and our plans for the fall. So specifically with your question, what about the plan for the fall? We will be open, fully open face-to-face. Many students actually still want part of the hybrid experience. So we will offer hybrid learning opportunities for those that want it, but most students can't wait to come back. Now, I'm very concerned about the variants that are out there. So we want everybody to be vaccinated. That is the single, for anybody listening, specifically on this. Now I'm speaking as a physician, not as a president. If anyone is not vaccinated and you're listening, the single safest thing you can do for yourself and for any of your loved ones who can't get vaccinated or who aren't vaccinated is to get vaccinated right now.
Thank you for that advice. The reason I jumped right to what you plan to do in the future, and I guess that was wrong of me, I should have given you an opportunity to answer what you just did, is I had read an article about your success with the COVID plan beginning right from the very start. So I knew that you were successful with it. I knew that you had a plan, and I knew that the infection rate was very, very low at Oakland University. So kudos to you on that. Kudos to your team on that. But what impact do you see on the education of students at Oakland University moving forward? Offering hybrid is certainly one thing, but what are you looking, what is your vision of Oakland University in 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. First of all, we like to think of ourselves as the university of choice. That's something that we are very, very focused on. And we have 4 strategic goals for Oakland. One most important goal is, of course, student success. That's something that we are, our students are our most important asset. That's what we're primarily focused on. Our second goal is in research and scholarly activity, because universities are about discovery. So we see that as a critical goal. The third, and this is where I think it's very important for the listening audience here, is community engagement. So we're very, very interested in engaging in the community, and we have lots of places to engage in the community. That's why something like this, a program like this, is very relevant to my day job, because we engage in lots of ways. Our faculty and our students are engaged in a huge way. One of the things that happened during the COVID crisis, when we actually did shut down for that period of time, we opened our campus to the community. So when we couldn't use our dorms, we offered the dorms to Beaumont, and not just Beaumont, actually to all the health systems, to come and use the dorms. We then used our Oakland Center, that's our student center, as a distribution center for food. We used our 3D printers to print face shields, and we had students and faculty and staff make masks during that period of time when you couldn't get masks, and then we distributed them into the community. But community engagement is our third strategic goal. It's a critical part of what we do. We have a major initiative called the Oakland University Pontiac Initiative. And you may be aware that we have a major initiative with the Jewish community. We have a significant Jewish program in the Sis Maisel Center for Jewish Studies. So we do a lot of things that engage us in the community. I'm very proud to serve now, newly appointed to the JCRC AJC board. That is a way for us to engage in the community as well. So that's our third strategic goal. I'm focused a lot on that now because it's, I think, relevant and of interest to your audience as well. And our fourth goal is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of course, that has tentacles into so many other things that we're interested in and that we do. So in terms of where will we be in 2 years, I hope we make progress on each one of these. But I think we're going to take a lot of lessons learned from this past very unusual and very difficult year, and take home many, many things. I am concerned, by the way, one area that I think was very difficult for many people is in the space of mental health. And many students and faculty and staff suffered mightily during this period. And we do have to ramp up our mental health services. And I'm aware that we're going to have to make improvements there.
And it sounds like you're leading that charge. I mean,
Yeah.
that's your team is on it. You mentioned that the Sis Maisel Center.
Yes.
Is that an initiative that began with you? Is that something that you're leading the way because of the, trying to gain a student population or a significant student population at Oakland University?
We have a modest Jewish population, and I would love to see that grow. But let me just say, the Jewish Studies program doesn't just teach Jewish students. And very interestingly, we have some very, very interesting programs in religious studies and in Jewish studies that teach non-Jewish students about Jewish studies, which I'm very, very proud of as well. We have an archaeology program in Israel, for example, that is the only archaeology program that I'm aware of at any of the universities in Michigan, for example, that's not part of the Sis Maisel program specifically, but that is an absolutely phenomenal archaeology program. Now, it was on hold this past year, that actually has made some very consequential and significant archaeological discoveries. Most of the students, by the way, that attend that program, that spend weeks in Israel on this archaeological dig that we've been doing now for several decades, are non-Jewish students. So, it's very important not only to take Jewish students and expose them to Jewish studies and to Judaica and to Israel, it's very important to also take non-Jewish students And that is a really important thing. Another program that I would love to tell.
Where's that 47th person?
Oh, I
They're
don't
not
know.
on our list, right?
Someone is not muted.
Yeah.
Alter.
Another program to tell your listeners about that we started this year that's of interest, that's a Jewish related program, is a program that we offer in our medical school. And we have a absolutely phenomenal medical school. But we offer a program in biomedical ethics in our medical school. Our medical school is a very, very unique medical school. It is phenomenal. We have about 8,500 applications for 125 slots in our medical school. So it's a highly competitive program. It's one of the top medical schools, and our students are phenomenal. I would be willing to be seen as a patient by any one of our students once they graduate from our school. They're outstanding. But we offer a unique program, which is really unique in the country, in biomedical ethics. We are now advancing a program that is specifically related to Holocaust studies as part of our biomedical ethics program. We are just rolling this out now, and it has several components to it. So the one part of the program involves sending students and a subset of faculty to Auschwitz. And this program will enable students, again, with the subset of faculty, to go visit Auschwitz and study about the history of the adverse events that actually started predating the actual Holocaust, and the role of physicians and other healthcare providers in enabling the Holocaust to take place, and the very significant role that medical professionals played in the Holocaust. And then these individuals coming back and teaching part of the curriculum in biomedical ethics in collaboration with the HMC, the Holocaust Memorial Center in Detroit. And this is part of a year-long curriculum for second-year medical students in our program. It's a very unique program that we're providing. We're spearheading it and piloting it. And it's a one-of-the-kind program that is not for Jewish students, it's for all of our medical students. And we're very, very proud of it. We're in the process of fundraising for it to maximize the number of people who will be able to go on the trip. But it's not limited just to the students that will go on the trip. The entire second-year class will be participating in this program. So it's really terrific. So we've got a lot of things that are really expansive and unique. These, I'm just pointing out a couple of unique features that Oakland offers that I think very few universities have. I'm very proud of them.
From what you just said, you should be quite proud. I have two more questions, and then I'm going to ask you if there's anything I missed that you'd like to say. But one of the things that I picked up was there were 4 words that you used, and not in any certain order, I hope, but achieve, afford, apply, and activate.
Oh my, you read all kinds of things.
Well, I didn't want to come into this blindly. I wanted to know a little bit about you before I met you on screen. But I thought they were interesting words, and they could be used in different order depending on the situation. How have you used those words just in your life, either professionally, personally, whatever?
Well, those are words that I use to strive for success. And they are words that, drive me. Maybe I'll strive to give you maybe a summary of how I look at many of those.
Okay.
But I'm a very driven person, and I try to motivate and inspire others. I'm now at this stage in my life where I'm not necessarily writing all those publications myself, but I'm mostly trying to create an environment in which others around me, it's kind of like being a mother. You want your children to exceed your own accomplishments, and that's really where I am now in terms of my stage. But I look at it like this, I always tell people around me, that we should aspire very high to achieve the highest goals possible. So I always tell my team and students that I see around me that we should be aspiring to reach the highest possible goals. And that to me is defined as, shooting for the stars, no matter how high or how hard. And that's what I mean by achieve. And if we miss, well, maybe we'll end up with a moon landing. And what's so bad about a moon landing? That's terrific. So if you do miss your aspirational goal and you land on the moon, you just can tell people that you were aiming for a moon landing, and that would be okay too. So that's kind of how I look at that set of goals. But you did a good job with your research, Risha. I think I was pretty impressed with your interviewing questions.
Now, if it's okay to you, I apologize. I believe that Risha may have had a bad internet connection, and she unfortunately looks like we've lost her for a minute. So I'll take this chance to reach out to our audience and let them know that if they have any questions for you, they can feel free to submit them via the chat feature at the bottom of their Zoom screen. And I'm happy to pick up moderating that conversation. So I'll just look at the chat. All right, I don't see any questions coming through right now. Oh, here we go. Here's one. This is from Cindy Frankel. I find the program pairing medical students with Holocaust studies so fascinating and relevant. How did that come about, and where do you envision it in 5 years?
Yeah, so let me tell you how it came about. We have a named lecture in biomedical ethics that is a collaborative program between the School of Medicine and the School of Education. We had a donor endow a lecture series for, as I said, both in education and in the medical school. So once a year, we invite a speaker nationally to come to our program. And we had a speaker come from Brown University who spoke about the role of, as I was speaking about, gave the history that physicians and nurses in Germany played in perpetuating, not actually, as I was indicating, it was not perpetuating the Holocaust, but actually enabling the Holocaust. And actually, I know that the Holocaust Memorial Center actually had a similar lecturer give a talk just this year about the role of physicians. It's a horrifying story to understand that, and it's horrifying particularly for me as a physician to know the role that physicians played in this story, because they really enabled this to happen in a very significant way. It's horrific. But as we were talking afterwards, we discussed how we could teach this as part of our curriculum. And we already were teaching biomedical ethics. It's something that was very important to us as part of our curriculum at Oakland. So we were teaching it in a variety of ways, but we were brainstorming about how important it was. And she was actually taking some students internationally to Auschwitz from other places, not in the same program that we were already discussing. So we were brainstorming about how we could merge the concepts together. We recognized that finances were an obstacle because the students themselves are already paying an enormous amount for tuition. And so we decided to fundraise for it. And we're still raising the funds, but it's a very attractive fundraising opportunity for us, and people understand how important it is. And we know that when we can teach future doctors these kinds of principles, that it makes them far more ethical, and it just makes them want to be more altruistic. And these are the kinds of doctors we want taking care of our family members. And we're already screening for good doctors, but it is an important part of their education. So it's been a really terrific concept. We haven't had our first trip yet. Our first trip is scheduled actually for next summer, but we're working the curriculum now. And it's really been fantastic. The community support for this is really been quite exciting.
From Lynn and Chuck Bomser, they wanted to know, what advice would you give to a young woman who aspires to achieve in her career? What are the tools that you feel really helped you in your success?
Well, first of all, let me say hello to Lynn and Chuck Bomser. I wish I could see you, and I'm hoping to do that. First of all, that's Kara's parents, and we went to college and medical school together. So it's great to see you. I think it's been a long time, if I'm not mistaken, since 1979. First of all, what I just said about shoot for the stars and don't think that there isn't anything that you couldn't do. And it was really my mother, in my case, who was my inspiration, who really didn't have the opportunity to go to college because of the circumstances in which she grew up, who told me that I could do anything that I wanted to do. And she was my inspiration. And I would just say that, a young woman who aspires to accomplish anything, whatever it is, needs to know that it is possible. That doesn't mean it is easy. And I think it is important to first have a goal and aspire to something, and then go about setting tactics and strategies to achieve a goal, and then be flexible and adaptable to recognize that sometimes your goals and your strategies and tactics are going to go awry, as they did very often for me. I mean, I had to be very flexible. I was in a dual career marriage. Sometimes my husband had to give, sometimes I had to give. And there are challenges. I alluded to the fact that my husband was killed. I didn't tell you how, but he was killed in a car accident. It was a very traumatic thing, and it did definitely impact me. That was later in my career, but people do get obstacles, and you have to learn to manage those obstacles. They can be very traumatic, like that one, but everyone faces some obstacles. So to learn how to be resilient and how to manage those obstacles is very important, and to learn how to develop support systems to help you with them, and to be willing to accept help is really, really very critical. So those are just a few little tips that I have, but I would be more than happy to get people some other ones as well. But that's a really great question, and I think it's a really important one.
On a different note, Suzanne Curtis was wondering, what do you do for relaxation and entertainment?
That's a really good one, because I have to say that my job, like my father often says, my vocation is my avocation. My father is 95 years old and he's still working. So I love my job, and I have to say that there are parts of my job that are actually very pleasurable and enjoyable, but I do love music. I love exercising. I love being with my children, and I love travel. But I will say that I have the pleasure and the privilege of seeing people almost every night. I have to say that part of my job is really a 7-day a week, 7 nights a week even job. So for example, last night I had guests at my home. Actually, tonight I have an online experience, but that is a big part of my job, but many of those things are actually pleasurable. So they might involve an athletic event, or going to a lecture, or giving a lecture, or going to a concert, or a basketball game, but you would consider them pleasurable, but I'm actually working at many of those events because I'm hosting someone or speaking at one of them, or even a basketball game. I'm kind of on display oftentimes. So it's a little bit different when you're president of a university than it is if you're, I would say, a lay person.
Jeannie Weiner was wondering, does your involvement with JCRC and AJC, which you mentioned previously, relate to your goals for diversity at Oakland University?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I had to think about that before accepting. I'm new to the JCRC AJC board, but I did have to think about it before agreeing to participate. And first of all, as I hope you can tell, being Jewish is a very important thing to me, and I am very proud to be Jewish. And first of all, gives me an opportunity to be to express my Jewish identity. But I also wanted to be certain that I didn't think it was in conflict with my job, and that it complemented my job. Because if I thought it was in conflict with my job, I wouldn't do it. So I wouldn't have agreed to it if I thought it was in conflict. But I actually believe that it complements my job. And in particular, it's one of the reasons why I spent some time on the second 2 goals of Oakland University: community engagement and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because those 2 goals, I believe, all 4 goals are very important. But actually, I believe it complements those 2, but also student success, because Rabbi Lopatin and I have been talking even before I was asked to serve on the board about a number of things where the JCRC and the AJC engage Oakland University. So there's a lot of overlap and connection. So it's definitely not in conflict, and I believe that there's overlap. But I like that question. It's a fair one. I'd be interested if anyone disagrees with me, and if they think it's a conflict or not supportive. I'd like to know. I'm very careful about things like this. And I will say, I'll give you an example of some things that I don't do. Nobody asked that question, but you might be interested. So for example, I do not go to political fundraisers, even though I have political views. And I work very hard not to publicly express a political opinion. I try very hard publicly I'm sure it's not always easy for me, and people probably do have a sense of my political views, but I try very hard publicly to be nonpartisan, and I don't go to any political fundraising events.
I just wanted to let our viewers know again, please submit any questions you may have via the chat.
So I lost my my internet connection for a while, and I'm back now, I hope. Jewish Historical Society of Michigan exists because we have Jews in Michigan who are part of our history. Well, Dr. Pescovitz, you're part of our Jewish history now. You've spent 10 years or 11 years at Michigan and now several years here at Oakland University. We write a journal. We have a journal that comes out every year, and it's very possible that there would be an article about you in 8-10 years. What would you want that article to say, and what would you want it to be?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure I've accomplished enough for you to write an article about me, but I would obviously be very flattered if you thought that I was deserving. But I think what I would be most proud of is knowing that, at least in my work, I created an environment in which others had succeeded, and in which people around me reached their full potential, and in which we left things better than they were when I got there, and that we had achieved the goals that we had started with, but that we left a mark, and that we left the world in a better place.
So we have a program called Michigan Women Who Made a Difference. It's on our website. We have probably 60 women who are highlighted, and I certainly would suspect that you would be one of those women in the future. So thank you for that. There is one more question that I had before I got knocked off, and that was, you started talking about your background as an RK, a rabbi's kid, and your Jewish background, and you've made it pretty clear how that dictates what you do and what drives you. And with the Sis Maisel Center, are you anticipating gathering more students at OU and looking at the future of the school in encompassing more and more Jewish students, either at the graduate level or the undergraduate level?
I would love to see that happen. We're not recruiting specifically Jewish students, but I would love to see the Jewish population at Oakland grow. We're sitting in the largest Jewish population part of Michigan. So I would love to have programs that are attractive to more Jewish students. And we already do, as I've already mentioned to you, many programs. So I think it would be very attractive for more Jewish students to attend Oakland. And a lot of our programming is already, we have a Hillel that we're part of. We're part of the Hillel of Metropolitan Detroit. And I also understand that they're about to build the Chabad right across the street from us, the local Chabad. So it's my understanding is that it's coming up in, I forget the name of the restaurant, but a restaurant that just went out of business right across the street from where we are on Squirrel Road. So it's a nidus for Jewish students to come. So both in terms of academic programs and in terms of student experiences, it's a great campus for Jewish students. So I think it's a wonderful place for Jewish students. But you know what I found when I've talked to Jewish students in our area? A lot of Jewish students say they don't want to live near home, which I think is really interesting because their homes are right near us. So they want to go away from home. So I think we have to get over that hump. So I'd be interested in any Jewish parents that are around here sort of responding to that, because our school is right near their homes and they want to get further away. So they want to go to the University of Michigan, which is, an hour and a half away. But I would love to increase our Jewish population.
Okay, Thank you. Kara, are there any other questions in the chat?
No, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to submit them at this time. We'll wait just another moment to see any, if any more come through. All right, I don't see any additional questions that have come through. Thank you so much, Dr. Pescovitz, for being with us today. This was such a treat to hear you talk about your time in Michigan, your time at Oakland University, and your life in general. And we are so grateful that you were able to take some time out of what is a very busy schedule running a university and running a university during COVID. So thank you so much. And to our audience, we hope to see you all very soon on one of our upcoming programs.
And thank you to Ann Conrad for sponsoring this.
Thank you to Ann Conrad for sponsoring this program. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.